Are you the type of person that is great at creating musical ideas but struggles to get them sounding professional like your favourite artists? Well, I was in this position until I learned the importance of effects. This video is for anyone looking to add that final 10% to their tracks and level up their production so they can get signed to their dream labels. In this video, I'll be showing you why effects are so important and how you can create your own free custom effects using only Ableton stock plugins and no samples. Here's my ultimate guide to effects.
SYNTHO.
Effects are an essential way to add depth and character to your tracks. They let the listener know that something is about to happen, allowing you to move from section to section within your track easily. Transitional areas are a very neglected part of music production, and actually is just as important as your big rises and build-ups. Anytime a change or a new element is about to be added, it's really important to add effects to let the listener know that this is about to happen. When I started to add effects to my music, it really took it to the next level, making it sound more polished, full, and professional. Here I have one of my release projects where I'm going to show you exactly how I've used the effects and how you can add that into your music as well. This entire section is dedicated for my effects. You can see I have lots of different layers, but really it's quite simple when you break them down. Every 8 bars, I have a small transitional effect. This then aligns with my arrangement, letting the listener know that a change is about to happen. As you can see, every 8 bars, I've got a small whoosh or laser sound, and this continues throughout the entire track. This allows me to move from phrase to phrase easily and really keep the listener engaged as I'm moving throughout the arrangement of my track. I have these small whooshes here. And here. And you'll hear that every time a change is about to happen, I have a transitional effects there to let the listener know. This then means that I'm flowing really nicely and smoothly from my intro to when I bring my bass line in. When I remove all these effects and layers, you can really hear that the quality drops off and the transition is far less smooth versus with them back in. You'll hear that the track is flowing into the next section really easily. The effects are there to help guide the listener into the next section, whether that be a small subtle change or a new section in your track. Because as a good arrangement tip, it's good to have changes every 8 to 16 bars. It's also then really good to have effects in that same position. Every time a new element is brought in, or you're simply making a small transitional change, it's time to add some more effects. This applies to any genre and any musical style. So don't think just because you're hearing in a house track that you can't apply this to your own respective genre. Now that we've heard it on a finished track, I'm going to show you how you can create your own effects using only Ableton stock plugins. So whilst we are working with Ableton stock plugins, this is actually applicable to any DAW, and all you need are the right tools to create these particular sounds. Now to begin, we're going to be using a white noise generator. You can use any white noise generator you have, but in this case, I'm going to be using Ableton's operator. We're going to load it up and change the wave type from sine to noise white. This is then our white noise generator. Make sure it's not too loud and you have a nice white noise tone. On Ableton 11, operator slightly filters this sound, so make sure you turn that off so that it comes through nice and clearly and you have that extra high end in your white noise. We're then going to add an EQ, and because white noise is made up of every single frequency at once, we need to make sure we take out the low end. We don't want to have any bass frequencies clashing with our bass lines or kicks, so it's really important to EQ our effects. So let's roll the bottom end out. Anywhere from 200 to 300 Hertz is a good sweet spot. From here then, we're going to add the key part to creating our effect sound, which is an auto filter. We can use this to create the sweep sound. The trick is to really boost the resonance of the cutoff frequency, so that then when we sweep through it, we can create this nice sweeping sound. On this auto filter, I'm going to boost the resonance to about 70%. 75 is a nice point, and this is going to really push that frequency. I'm going to pull this down, and then if I hold the note, I can create a cool sweeping sound. Whilst I'm currently using a low pass filter, the best one to actually use will be a bandpass filter, because it means we haven't got any of the buzzy harshness of the highs, or any of the roughness from the lows, and we're using only a specific frequency on the auto filter. By setting it here, we then have a nice specific sound, and we can create this really smooth sweeping effect sound. Now, however, it does sound very dry, so a really great way to add some depth to your effects is by adding some delays. Reverbs can sometimes add a little bit of muddiness to your mix, so it's good to work with delays in this particular case. If you want an extra trick for adding some stereo width, use a ping pong delay. If I turn the dry wet down on the delay, now you can hear how much depth this adds. Instantly, we've got an amazing sweeping sound just using those really simple effects in combination together. This is going to be perfect for those small transitional areas. If you want to make some more complex and longer sounds, we can then start to apply the LFO on the Ableton auto filter. This is going to start to add movement and new dimensions to the sound. So if we turn up the amount and the rate and start to move these parameters, you can create some amazing and complex effects layers. These are going to be great to layer underneath your sounds, whether you're working in transitional areas, and also to add that extra depth and character to your tracks. It's only when you take them out of tracks do you realize just how important they are and how much character they can add to your own music. Most of the sounds we've looked at so far are typically risers, and they're used for rising and increasing intensity in your tracks, as well as some of those transitional areas. But also we can use the same technique for downlifters and also release of impact and tension. Rather than starting from the bottom end of the frequency spectrum, you just need to move the cutoff to the higher end and then move downwards in a short way or a longer, slower way. After you've used effects to rise up and build that intensity, you can then use the downlifters to bring it back down again and get that release and impact from your drops and other impact areas. This is perfect for after you've built up that intensity, you have that release and impact in your key moments in your tracks. Now that we've learned the importance of effects and how we can create our own custom ones, we're now going to put them into practice in a track that needs them. Here we have a track that sounds great, but it's lacking the depth that comes from effects. My key transitional areas really need those effects layers to let the listener know that those changes are about to happen. Here's how it sounds right now. You might be able to hear that there's actually a lot of space where we can fill using effects layers. We're going to use the technique that we learned before and create our own effects and really fill out this space and smoothen out our transitions. So we have our operator white noise, our EQ, delay, and then of course our auto filter to really create this tone. If you want to create a more lasery tone and less of a white noise tone, then all you need to do is boost the resonance even further. Just watch out for your volume if you do so. So we're going to start by inputting the MIDI for our effects, and then we can draw in the automation to help create that movement. So we'll start by adding a MIDI clip, putting in our note to fill in the area, making sure that we have our cutoff frequency selected, and then automating this up. Let's see how this sounds. That was really nice, but I feel like we can go even shorter than that. So let's really shorten this up and have it nice and short and sweet. So the perfect sweet spot for this particular track was 2 bars. You can have anything between 1 to 4 bars, and that's generally a good place to work with. For transitional areas, it's good to have a shorter effects, and if you want to add more intensity, then use a longer one to build it up over a longer period of time. Now that we've got this in one place, let's make sure we add it into other areas of our tracks so that it's consistent. So I'm going to duplicate this every 8 bars and have this throughout the track. You can hear the difference that instantly makes when you're working with those transitional areas. It then leads into when that bass line comes in and helps add even more impact when it does. The idea is that those effects are there to complement your main elements and really guide and manipulate the listener in the way that you want them to. We're then going to duplicate this and create some more effects layers to really fill out this section. And we're going to have a sound that works in the middle of these effects layers. So maybe something that goes downwards. Input this note, fill this out. You can see it's a really short one this time. And rather than going up, we're going to go down and create that more of an impact sound. You can see by changing the way the automation moves, you can create these different layers and textures that's going to really fill out the track. If you wanted to add a bit more of a bend to this automation curve, all you need to do is hold the Alt or Option button, wave it over the automation line, and you can create a nice smooth curve. And you can see it spends a bit more time in that high end. That sounds really, really nice. And again, the idea is if we try and create a 16 bar loop of effects, we can then duplicate that across our entire project. By having 16 bars worth of variation, that's just enough change to keep the listener engaged, while also they're not having to have a new effect sound for every single section of our track. Finally, let's add one more effects layer using the LFO trick. So we're going to duplicate this again. We don't need this section, and we're going to try and fill in this space here. Let's turn on this LFO and turn on the rate. And something in that sort of style will sound really nice. Select the area you want, add a new MIDI clip. We can right click or we can use the shortcut. Add our note. If we want to extend that for the full length of that note as well, we can press the legato button rather than having to drag out that note. We can close this window and now let's put in our automation. I think we should go down in this particular case. We could even add some automation onto our rate as well to slow and speed up as we go through. But I think it sounds nice when we just keep it that constant. This means that there's an effects layer pretty much every time a change or new layer is about to happen. Now that I've got 16 bars worth of effects layers, I can simply duplicate these across. And now I've got a nice amount of effects to really fill out this track, and it's sounding much more full and professional. One of the benefits of using your own effects is you have so much more control than just working with samples. Because you're the one automating these effects and controlling them, this means you can add so much more variety to your sounds. You can have different levels of intensities for different areas of your tracks, and you can really create a lot of variety throughout your tracks just by changing and tweaking the automation each time. I've obviously duplicated this across plenty of times, but you can actually change this for every single one should you want it to. This is one of the keys to having an interesting track by having a variety of automation. The possibilities are endless when working with effects, and you can really make them personal and custom to how you need them in your track. As a bonus tip, to create even more depth and complexity in your tracks, try adding effects layers and spot effects in between your transitional areas. So that was my ultimate guide to effects. I believe that these techniques are really going to help elevate your music further and really add that level of professionalism. It really added a new dimension to my own music, and I know it's going to do the same to yours. If you're ready to level up your music game further, then make sure you head over to the SYNTHO app.